Welcome to Insight Builder channel. How LLMs execute code and commands on your computer. Part 9 of the Crew AI multi-part videos. Using Python exec and subprocess functions to execute code and command in Crew AI. There are two things that we will be diving into. There is code execution and there is command execution. So what is the difference? Code is anything that you write in a particular language and then you execute that code. Like, let me show you an example. We have a code here. In line number 3, we have a code and it is saying print hello world, and also it is saying something in a cryptic fashion. So if you look at it little more concentration, you will see that it is saying a equal to 6 here, and then we are saying print a, and also we are saying c equal to 5. This is a very cryptic way of writing, but this is how we are going to make the code to execute. So we are giving the code as a text to the exec function, and the exec function executes the code. Then comes the another side of it is called as command execution. Command execution is executing a particular executable. There are lots of executables in our own operating systems. Let us go back, and if I look at the various executables in my Linux operating system, I will have to do an ls on user bin. So the bin folder in the Linux system is actually the binary folder which contains all kinds of executables, and these executables are basically the commands that you execute, right? So basically commands are nothing but executables with various different flags. So I can do an ls which will list the various files in my folder, and if I do an ls-l, it will list the same file but with additional information. So here ls is a command, and also ls is a binary that lists the files in the directory. Now you have seen the difference between the code and the command, right? Let's go back. In case of the language models, what we are going to do is we are going to execute the code that is generated. First, it is generated by the language model, and that generated code is sent to the execution tool, and then the output of that code is then sent back to the next step, or it is printed out. That is how it works. And this tool part is where we are concentrating right now. We are going to write a tool in Crew AI which can do this execution after the code is generated. We want this to be automatic. We don't want to copy paste the code. That is our primary objective. That is a problem that the tool solves. After that, we might want the output to be written to a file, and for that we can have a separate agent. That is code execution. The same thing happens with the command execution also. Instead of generating the code, here we are generating the command, and that command is sent to the command execution tool, and the output is taken out. These two are the most essential part of how LLMs can operate on your operating system. They can literally operate everything. They can create files, folders, they can read, and also importantly, they can execute code. They can execute other Python code or other Python scripts that are present in your directories. So let us now get back to the code. So here initially I am going to just show you the bare examples of how exec works. So basic_exec.py is the file that contains some of the examples of how you can use the exec function. So if you see in the line number 4, you see the exec function. I am giving 3 variables here, parameters in fact. So I'm giving the code. Code is a string of characters, which is actually a Python program. And I will also print this Python program so that you guys can understand what's going on. The program in code. So once you print it, you will see that the lines are a little more different because the new line character becomes very visible. And we have the dictionary, the empty dictionary called exec_locals. We can take out the data from the executed code using the exec locals. And also there is an empty dictionary inside the exec function, and this is called as global variables. We have to leave it empty. We don't need to touch that. Our concentration should be on getting the values inside the exec locals. I am going to comment out rest of this code so that we can concentrate only on the first 1 to 5 lines, 6 lines. Let us execute this code. I'm going to go into code AI, which is the repo, cruise and flows, interpret code. So that is the folder I'm using, and I am going to say Python basic exec. Now the moment I execute Python basic exec, you see that the programming code is coming up to this. So the programming code has print hello world, then it has a equal to 6 and c equal to 5, and finally it has called print a. All of these things are here. All of these things are here. And after that, you see this hello world. This hello world is happening because of this. This is pretty confusing, right? It is one of the challenges of working with exec. It's not intuitive. However, it is one of the ways where you can use or where you can send the generated code to Python and make it to execute the code. It is kind of, using Python to execute Python. It's like kind of a, the snake eating its tail, right? All you need to remember is that you need to send the code as the first variable parameter. The second should be empty dictionary, and the third should be the dictionary that you're going to take it out and operate. So this value, the exec locals that is getting printed, let me make it more visible so that you guys can understand what's happening. So this exec local will contain all the variables like a, c, you see here, right? A, c, etc. All these variables it will contain, and also it will contain the result values. So if in case I create one more, b equal to a plus c, and if we need to give a new line character, that's very important, or else it will create a confusion. So if I make this code a little more longer, and you'll see that instead of just having a and c here, I will get a b also right now. So let me execute the code. Okay, so here I am first of all getting an indentation error. That is because of how you see there is an indentation here. This should not be there. I can only see this here because this code line is getting printed here, right? I have to remove this. So I have to remove this space between the new line character and the command and the syntax. So now if I execute it, you will see there is no gap compared to the earlier one, and you can see that I'm able to execute and get the new value called b equal to 11. This is how exec works. Fine. So keep this in mind. Okay. Practice it. That's very important. Write your own code, write simple codes. Most importantly, write functions and try to call the functions, because that's how LLMs are going to work. Okay, let's go to subprocess. Subprocess is a module in Python, and subprocess has got multiple functions that can do multiple functions, and also it has got classes also. So these functions and classes can help to run the commands, like the command that I showed you right now. It can help to run commands like ls. It can also help to run commands like basic exec.py. So it can help to run this commands also. So Python basic exec.py is again a command that you are giving it in the terminal shell. So any command or any syntax that you use on this terminal shell is a command, right? Here what you are doing is, you can see that I am going to use Python basic underscore exec.py as the example that I am showing here, right? And I'm using subprocess.run. So this is the method, this is the function that I'm using, the run function, where I'm giving the command. So line number 8 has the commands. I'm saying the parameter shell equal to true. So once I use shell equal to true, I can give the command in a single line. So you don't need to break the commands into a list. So if you see in line number 4, I have broken it into parts, right? So you don't need to do that. That's one of the benefit of using shell equal to true. And we have standard out and standard error. So these are the two important ways of getting the outputs from the command execution. So when I say ls equal to L and when I press enter, you see that I'm getting all this out, correct? This is actually a text-based output that is coming out, right? And this text-based output is called a standard out. I can actually redirect this standard out into a file if I want, and also if I make a mistake. So if I say lt, you'll see that command lt is not found, and it is asking me to install some kind of loop tools. It is expecting that lt is a loop tool. So this is an error. So this is the standard error and this is a standard output. And you might be wondering, okay, is there a standard in? Yes, that is a standard in. And in case of Python and various other applications, we do use that standard in time to time. But here we are not going to get into that complication, right? So this is a very basic introduction. And then text equal to true. So this actually ensures that the standard error and standard out are basic text strings that you can easily process. In case of to get the result of execution of this Python basic.exec.py, you have to just print result.standard out and result.standard error. So let me actually make it a little more easier for us to understand. Right. Okay, let us execute this. And before we execute, I would like to, there are two ways of doing the command execution. So I'll be showing one more way also, which we'll be using in the next step, where in the tool implementation is pretty simple. So you guys don't need to be that much concerned, because once you understand how the implementation happens at the basic level, using it for complex technology is much more easier. So you are right now thinking, okay, Kamal, just now we executed the Python code using the basic underscore exec, but what's happening here? So I am using Python basic subprocess.py, but still I'm getting the output of basic exec, and there is no standard error. So what's happening? What is really happening is that basic process.py is actually calling basic exec.py. So to make your life a little more easier, so I just showed you a complex example. Let me make it a little more easier. So I'm going to do a list of the current directory. So if I right now execute this, it will list the various directory that is present here. So as I told, the output that you get from ls-l is actually a text, and that is under standard out, and there is no standard error, right? So if I want standard error, what I need to do is pretty simple. So if I say LT, and what will happen is now there will be no standard output. As you see, there is no standard output, and here in standard error it's saying LT not found, right? So this is what I was talking about when you are trying to understand the basics. So now you know how the subprocess.run works basically, right? So next what you're going to do is we are going to just hide this out, so we just don't need the printout of it. And next we are going to unhide popen. Excuse me, sorry about that. So in case of popen, subprocess.popen, so we are still using the same kind of a structure. So there is a command, we have shell equal to true, we have subprocess.pipe for standard out and standard error, and then we have text equal to true. The only difference is after you execute that popen, you will see that the result of the standard out and standard error is received through the communicate method of the popen result instance. There's not much of a difference. You can use either subprocess run or you can use popen, but popen is much more preferable when you are going to work in a production ready application. And the output is pretty straightforward. It's going to be standard out and standard error. Let me execute that. And now you will not see the standard out and standard error, but you will see the program code and the exec local. So this is still, again, it's executing the basic exec. So if I change this command, ls-l, that will move to execute and list the directory in my list the files in the current directory. Okay, so we have understood the basic subprocess, and also we have understood how the code gets executed by exec. In the next video, we will dive into how to actually use Python exec and subprocess in Crew AI tools. That will be in part 2 of this video.